Alright, YouTube, it is Mr. Mean coming at you this very sunny Tuesday morning, April 16th, 2019. It is roughly, 35 degrees, mostly, it says mostly cloudy, but I've been out and about this morning, and it's been nothing but sunny. It is gorgeous outside. Let's get some housekeeping out of the way. As always, like and subscribe on YouTube. It really helps the channel out. Brain fart. I'm on Discord. I'm on MeWe. If you go to my YouTube channel, you can see those links there on the right-hand side at the top on my banner where it says Mr. Mean Speaks. Down in the bottom right-hand corner of that banner, there's a link for MeWe and there's a link for Discord to join my channels. Please come on over. Love to chat with you. I a lot of times do live videos. Right now, YouTube has gone through some changes and stuff, and so until we figure it all out, I'm just going to pre-record these and upload them as soon as I'm done. As always, I take donations. I'm unemployed, so this is just another way for me to earn a little revenue. It helps feed the family and keep me out of trouble. Keeps the videos coming, too. You can reach me at ZellePay, Z-E-L-L-E pay.com. If you have a mobile banking app, it's usually linked to that. There's nothing you need to do except go to it, and you can send me a donation of whatever you decide. And the cool part is I get it instantly for the most part, like within an hour, and there's no fee for you and there's no fee for me, which is nice. So if you donate $10, I get $10. It's pretty cool. So again, you can donate to J, at the letter J, P-O-L-A-C-K @gmail.com, and that'll send a donation straight to me right from your bank account, and whatever you can send is awesome, and I'll try to give a shout out. Jesse B has been donating quite frequently every time I post a video, so a big thank you to you, sir. I appreciate it. He's also on my Discord channel, and we chat a little bit here and there, so a big shout out to Jesse B for all your support. Thanks, much love to you, sir. Thank you very much. It may only be a couple bucks to you, but to me it means the difference between putting gas in my car or putting food on the table. So thank you very much. And thanks to everybody else who's helped supported the channel. As always, like and subscribe. And thank you guys. You guys rock. Anyway, today's video du jour is a blast from the past. Little background, this game has had several iterations. It went through a 3.0 phase, it went through a 3.5 phase, it went through its own phase, and then it went through a Pathfinder phase. And it is someone who is very prolific in the fantasy environment, and their name is quite well known. And it's been staring at me on my shelf, and I kept saying, man, I need to do a review. I need to talk about this game because I don't think a lot of people know about it. And came out in 2000. So yeah, 19 years old. Can you believe it's been 19 years since 3.0 and all that fun stuff? It's crazy, right? The game I am talking about is Larry Elmore's Sovereign Stone. This game has seen iterations in 3.0, 3.5, and Pathfinder. I know the Pathfinder books are really hard to get a hold of. This is its own version, which is the one I like the best. I do not like the D20. Well, this is a D20 version as well. But I don't like... Well, actually, it's not fully a D20 version. I'm sorry, I digress. I don't like the Pathfinder and or the 3.0, 3.5 version of the rules. I like the Sovereign Stone rules. This is conceptualized by Tracy, Hickman, and Margaret Weis, and Larry Elmore. If you've seen the classic red box D&D with the red dragon and the guy in the front with the sword slashing across, that's Larry Elmore. He's done a lot of art throughout the years. He's graced many different game companies, Palladium, Shadowrun, of course D&D. I think he's even done a couple things for Pathfinder Paizo. Don't quote me on that, but I believe he has. He's prolific in the industry, and his fantasy art, especially for Dragonlance, is phenomenal. But this is its own system, and it's a little It's a little beat up, but not bad. It's for 20, published in 2000 by Sovereign Press. So it was its own game company. As far as I can tell on the web, they are out of business. I went on Amazon.com. You can't buy it on Amazon. I did see there's an updated Pathfinder version on Drivethru RPG. I'll put a link down in the notes. I have managed to find these in my game stores, the used bookstores. There used to be a store in Arizona called Bookman's. And as a matter of fact, you can see this one still has the price tag on it. I paid a whopping $4 for a, there's no, $20 source book. So, and sadly, there were several source books released for this, especially under the D20 3.0 imprint, and I never picked them up. But I have the Tal source book, or the Tan, T-A-A-N source book, and the old Venengale source book, Venengale, City of Sorrows. So this is its own set by Sovereign Press. I don't know how many books they put out. I'm going to try to go look later on and see. But I got these two source books. What is amazing about these is very well done. I mean, these books are 20 years old, 18 to 19 years old, and they're still holding up. I don't flip through them a whole lot. Yeah, this was done by Sovereign Press as well in 2000. So, and I know the company's defunct. I couldn't find any web presence for them whatsoever. And I don't think Larry Elmore had much to do with them except that he provided all the art. And it was his conceptual design for his idea of a good fantasy world. This is a huge pet peeve of mine. Stickers on books. I hate defacing my books. Unfortunately, the stickers that Bookman's used, and they were a used media outlet, so they sold VHS, DVD, everything. It's a huge chain, not huge, but it's a big chain down in Arizona. And it's a great store, but they used these stickers that were very gluey. And so if you peel this sticker off, it has a chance to tear the paper and or just leave a horrible residue that, of course, with a little hot water or a little WD-40, you can take it off. But because this is just basically plain cardboard or heavy stock paper, it will warp when it gets wet. And so that's why I've chosen to leave those stickers on there. I may one day try to take them off because it's a huge pet peeve. I was able to get it off of this book because it's hardback, and so it was able to withstand it a little bit better. And you can't even see. There's a minor little nick right there from shipping when I was moving. But for most of all, it's a sewn, glued, stitched binding. Held up very well. Art in the book is all pretty much Larry Elmore's. I believe other people did contribute to the art, but it's phenomenal. So, this is its own world. This is not a preset D&D world. This is not D&D. Sovereign Stone game system used its own mechanic, which I think is a pretty good mechanic. It's kind of the... it uses a full set of polyhedrals, but what's even nicer is it uses one of these. And 30 cool points to anybody who knows what this is. Yes, the dreaded 30-sided dice. These are hard to get a hold of. A little bit easier now, but the only way back in the day I knew how to get them is you either had to special order them or you ordered the DCC dice because it came with a D30 in it. So this is a D30 that I ordered back in the day, probably from Chessex, most likely. There's no marking on here to tell me where it came from, but it's a cool die, nice purple. It's my favorite color. So a D30, because this game does use a D30. D30, D20, on down, all your polyhedrals. What was nice about the Sovereign Stone game system is it was its own system. It basically had more in common with Friday Night Firefight. Basically, the R. Talsorian. It was a stat and a skill, but as opposed to a stat and a skill and a 1d10, your stats were based on a die code, depending on what your stat was. A D4, D6, D8, and then your skills were also purchased at a die code, so a D4, D6, D8, D12, whatever. And what you would do is the GM would set a target number, say 15, which is a that's a reasonable target number. And what would happen is you would roll whatever your attribute die was, and you would roll whatever your skill die is, and you were looking to exceed that target number. Let me see. And I believe, if I remember correctly, the target numbers went like 3, 7, 11. I thought it odd that they skipped 9 because they're kind of going prime numbers. Yeah, here we go. So a 15 would be a formidable target number. Easy would be 3, average would be 7, hard would be 11. Heroic is a 19. But remember, you're rolling a stat and a skill, whatever those dies are. And then one of the cool things they had, which I think was ahead of its time, is you could suffer stun. If you really needed to succeed at something and you thought your attributes and your skills might be a little low, you could suffer either 1 or 2 points of stun for an unskilled attempt. That was your max, 1 or 2. If you were skilled, you could go all the way up to 7 points of stun. Of course, stun was like hit points, and the more stun you get and you hit your threshold, you could be knocked unconscious. So you could literally try to cast a spell or try to do a skill and knock yourself out from suffering stun, which I thought was cool. It leads to the storytelling. You know, if you make the roll and you don't succeed and you suffer the stun, you go unconscious possibly. And I thought that was neat. So if you were unskilled, an apprentice or a novice in a skill, the max you could spend was 2 skill or 2 stun. And that stun, for every point, the die code went higher. So for level 1 stun, it was a D4. Level 2 was a D6. If you were skilled in whatever you were trying to do and you wanted to take stun in order to really need to succeed on this task, you could suffer up to 7 points of stun. And if you took 7 points of stun, you got to roll an extra D20. 5 points of stun was a D12. 4 points was a D10, and on down the die code. So of course you notice there's no 6 for stun because there's nothing between a D12 and a D20. There is on the Xochi dice, but DCC wasn't that big back in 2000. I mean, it was out there, but it wasn't. So nobody knew there was a D16 die, because if you're familiar with DCC, there's a D16. But they didn't know about it, I guess, or chose not to use it. So you could take that stun, and like I said, it could knock your ass out, which I thought was awesome. So you have your world. It's a fantasy world, and of course it's very detailed in the book. Of course, Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weis. Obviously, it's going to be amazing, because if you've read Dragonlance, you know how awesome they are. So the character sheet is pretty stoic, but nicely done. It's kind of a parchment, like tanned ink color, with this bright light going on in here. It's I can't show you too well. This was also a set of novels, if I remember correctly. But there's the actual character sheet out of the back of the book. I do believe I found one online. If I did, I'll try to put a link to it. You had a hit point tracker and a stun tracker, basically. So as you took damage, you would just tick it off down the line. And what was neat is combat worked out really well, and I liked how they did combat. Armor subtracted from damage, shields subtracted from damage, but they slowed you down. They gave you a penalty to things you were trying to do, because if you're running around in full plate armor, you can't move as fast as a guy who's running around in just a leather jerkin. He's going to obviously be able to dance circles around you. If you want to see a prime example of armor in effect and fatigue, Game of Thrones, I think it was season 5 or 6 or 7, where Tyrion chooses Bronn as his champion. And I watched Game of Thrones last night. That's the only reason I'm bringing this up. But it is an awesome example where they're fighting in the Vale, and they're fighting this knight, and he's in full armor. He's got a shield and he's got a sword, and Bronn is just wearing leather, and he's fighting with basically a long sword and his dagger. And he dances all around this guy, wears this guy out to the point that he can't barely even swing his sword, and then just fucking kills him. So it's really a really great example of heavy armor versus no armor and the protection, because Bronn does get a couple hits on the guy, doesn't even slow him down, because he's wearing this heavy armor, and Bronn's hitting the armor. He tries to hit him in spots. Like, I think he gets him on the back of the leg once he starts wearing out. But go check it out. If you're a Game of Thrones fan, you probably already know what I'm talking about. I think it was either season 6 or season 7. Might have even been before. I don't remember. But look for it. It's totally worth it. It will definitely exemplify what I'm talking about. So, that being said, you manage to hit somebody. You do your die code. Most weapons have a die code based on strength. They don't add anything extra to it. It's whatever your strength is. That also limits what weapons you can use. I like that. I don't want to see. It kind of takes it out of the realm when you've got a 5'2" guy wielding a 2-handed claymore. It just doesn't make any sense. That guy's not going to be able to effectively wield it. And if you made your character, I don't want to say properly, but if you made your character thematically to suit your vision of your character, your 5'2" guy who weighs 110 pounds soaking wet probably not going to have a D10 or a D12 in strength. So therefore, he's not going to be wielding that big ass sword. He might wield 2 short swords, which would make sense. But anyway, so you get hit, you roll your damage. Your armor and or shield will provide X amount of soak, and they subtract from that damage. Anything left over goes through to you and comes off of your hit points and your life points. Shock counts up, life points count down, and if they meet in the middle, you're in big trouble. But it was a cool system. You had progression points. You had Tainted by the Void, which is like the evil stuff. Those people who use magic are broke in dark powers. It was a cool setting. So your physical attributes were agility, dexterity, strength, and vitality. Your mental attributes were alertness, intelligence, psych, and willpower. You had a major advantage and minor advantage, and a major disadvantage and a minor disadvantage. And then you had skills. Your skills were left blank. You could choose whatever skills you want based on your race and your culture, and then whatever you chose to pick. And then you got a rating in that skill. Your rating was equated to a die code, and you go from there. I wanted to get to the races, and they list a bunch of skills. There's quite a few skills, so very much you can make a character. There's the skill list. That whole area right here is all the skills. So you could make a very detailed. You want to make an archer, archery is in here, and you can do that. You want to make a mage, you can make a mage. You want to make a blacksmith who's decided to adventure, you can do that. And I really like games that do that. That's one of my pet peeves with D&D is they don't really necessarily have the skills to fit the backgrounds, like theology. I mean, yeah, they have religion as a skill, but it just doesn't sit well. Like here you have carpentry, so you can make things. There's no carpentry in D&D. You just have crafting, and it's generic. It's not to say D&D is bad. I think this is one of those fantasy games I want to get to the table and play with a group. I think it would be fun. I kind of like the mechanics, and I'd like to see how well it plays out. And I mean, it's a 19-year-old game. I'd like to see if it stands the test of time. And I think, to be honest, it will from what I've been reading. I've owned this game from the beginning. I bought it back in 2000. I remember when I lived in Arizona, I went and bought it. I bought this at Ian's Games in Northern California, in Vallejo, California. I remember he had it on the shelf. I bought these in Arizona because the market at the time was flooded with the D20 variants, and I didn't want those because I was never a huge fan of D20. So of course you have your homeland and your family or your clan and your race, and then you have some background and some appearance, some equipments, holdings, income, followers, guild memberships, and property. So this game really went in depth. You could really, really develop a background. If you played this game for a while, you could build in followers and things like that, which I think is really awesome. Enemies and allies, the spot for it on the character sheet, your weapons, the damage bonus, the defense rating, and your money and or possessions. Then you went into your races. So the Vengalians were basically humans. And you have, the cool part is you have a whole bunch of different subspecies of humans. which is cool. So they're racial packages for the humans. So if you take a Vengalian character, you choose one advantage and one disadvantage from the following list: heirloom, highborn, landed gentry, perpetually rich as advantages. Disadvantages: debt, greed, portly, pacifism. And then you get your Vengalian racial skills. And they do this for all the different subcultures and cultures. So your orcs are going to get their skills and packages and advantages and suggested. You don't have to take those. It's just the ones that make most sense if you come from that region, which I like. They're giving you a jumping off point. You build your character more from there. So the Vengalian racial skills, choose 4 skills from the following list. These skills are taken at the novice rank or D6 level. So any one weapon: climbing, earth magic, engineering, etiquette, history, human, leadership, literacy, religion, writing, scholarship, and shield. So you want to make a badass warrior, you get 4 skills. You can take a weapon skill, you can take leadership, you can take writing, and shield. There's 3 skills, and you're basically a knight. You've got everything you need to be a knight. They give you some options for names for the Vengalian. Then the Dunkargans, which are also humans, and they're more like your Arabian Nights. Your Venegalians are more like your French, your medieval European, English type people, with a little bit of like French and European thrown in there. Your Dunkargans were your like Arabian Nights and your Persians and those kind of people. And of course, it gives their advantages and disadvantages in their skills and their names. Carnoons, again, humans, very much more like your Persian and or desert dwellers. So Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, that kind of area, kind of gypsies a little bit, and they give you some pictures to kind of depict them. So you can kind of get an idea of where you're going with. Nimrins, also humans. Again, very much your African, your desert, your very dark-skinned people, very cool looking, very Arabian Night looking, very Zulu warrior, super cool. Again, advantages, disadvantages, skills. Nemorians, so Nimorans and then Nemorians. Nemorians were more of the civilized. They wore heavy armor, almost like your Chinese and your African mixed. Very cool. Then the Trevenici. And man, they've got some names. These are more like your barbarians, and they got a picture of your bronze skinned, muscle bound, using spears, living off the land. You're almost Vikings would be a good way to put them. The Pequi are basically, what's a good, I can't think of it, but they're non-human. They're like almost dog-like, but they've got the pointy ears. They've got good hearing, really good at brewing. They all have the minor advantage empathy, animal, and minor empathy animal as an advantage, minor advantage, and the minor disadvantage pacifist, so they don't like to fight. Elves, and your elves are your typical, they run the gamut. They're all over the world. Some run in the heavy, Asian type armor, and again, very cool picture. And their elven characters choose one advantage and one disadvantage. Ambidextrous, beautiful, empathy, avian, and highborn. Disadvantages: distinctive looks, honest, infamous, and special enemy. And then of course they get their skills, and they get to choose 3 skills. All elf characters start with a D6 in etiquette to represent their highly structured culture. So they get a free skill in etiquette at a D6. And then they choose 3 other skills from the following list that are taken at the D6. Any one weapon, air magic, artistry, player choice, astrology, history, elven, leadership, literacy, notice, writing, scholarship, and tactics. And then of course their elven names. Clan Dwarves. This is what I thought was cool about this setting. Dwarves kind of take on the role of the Huns in human history. So they're nomadic and horseback. And so it goes in through their things. And then there's the unhorsed dwarves. And of course, they are short. And unhorsed dwarves are obviously the ones that are not necessarily so nomadic. Orcs are big and strong and kind of fall along that almost that Viking barbarian line, a little bit more closer to the water. So again, with the Viking theme, but very cool. So, I mean, there you go, man. You got all your classic fantasy races. You've got different racial and cultural packages that you can take. You can very much, I mean, the game, I mean, for being, what is this? 177 pages, including a full index, which is awesome. I love indexes. I mean, you got everything in here you need. You've got enough on the world history. You know what's going on. It's a standard fantasy setting. You know it's written by Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weis, so it's going to be just awesome and detailed and very, very well written. How to create a character, you know, the world of Lorim, which is the default world, the continent. There's the huge map you can see, and they've got the Dwarven Horselands, you know, the Dwarven territories, divine lands of the Trome, the Veningale, which is the big human empire, Dunkargan or Dunkarga, Karnu, Nimra, which, you know, all the different races. What is role playing? I mean, it's standard RPG from that era. You know, they tell you what it is. They give you an introduction. What are the dice? You know, they tell you specifically you need a 30-sided dice. I like that. Tell you where to find gamers. You know, your local game store. They even mention the web, I think. No, they don't. Your local hobby or game store. The game has no strict time structure. The players set the time limit for each game. So, I mean, obviously, before the big heyday of the internet, there's no website or anything on here, which is, you know, typical. It was early 2000 this game came out. So it tells you about all the realms and everywhere that you know, these people are from, and money. Orders of the Keepers of Time. The monks of the Order of the Keepers of Time continually roam the world, recording events of their own on their own skin. When these monks die, their bodies are preserved and kept in a great vault in the monastery for future generations to study. They write the history on their skin. That's badass. They have their own economy, the Continents, and then Dormagants, and then Organts, and then a gold bar. So I'm not wild about the economy name. I would just probably change it to, you know, copper, silver, and gold, since that's kind of what those each represent, and it's 10-to-1 ratio. 100 argents equals 1 organt. 640 organts equals 120-pound gold bar. So yeah, they have a gold-based economy, which makes sense. They give you what you know about the world, the game master, the players, what's your expectations. It's really well done. The art, of course, it's Larry Elmore's art, so there's you can't say anything bad about it. It's just phenomenal art, and it's that fantasy, and it's kind of its own. I'm trying to say, I don't think I've seen any art that I've seen somewhere else. Larry was known for his detailed art, you know, and especially guys in armor suits. Look at that. That helmet there is just crazy. The Ton are a reptilian race. Now, I don't know enough. I believe they are the consummate bad guy in the realm, because I know they use void magic, and void is bad. But are they inherently evil? I don't know. There's a Dominion Lord. Those guys, obviously, Dominion sounds bad. Another nice piece of ornate art. Very well done. These are the major forces in the land. So the book gives you everything you need. Now, this, I believe, is redone from a Palladium book. So they have recycled some art. I've seen this somewhere else, and it might have even been, I think it was Palladium, but I'm not sure. I believe Larry owns all of his own art. In other words, he doesn't, you know, unless someone contacts him specifically, to sell them a piece of art. He retains the rights to all his art. We have a bunch of different monsters, satyrs. Everything has kind of slightly different names. Pink tail is otherwise just basically a big ass rat. There's a pink tail, and then there's an ogre, and man, they don't look nice. So typical fantasy monsters. So you've got enough of a monster manual in here to get you started. Clobbers are basically arts. Hobgoblins are basically rotting hobgoblins. Humanoid 6 feet tall with long muscular arms and legs that support a bloated torso. Hobgoblin's face is vaguely human with deep set black eyes and long sharp yellow teeth. Yeah, not nice. Kurger, that's a big worm that lives underground and sucks you down. Giant slob, their version of goblins. Giants, chomp flies. Arbroger. Arbroger is a six-legged beast often mistaken for enormous furry spiders. Yeah, it's just teeth and limbs. I don't want to run into that. And he said giant, which is the part that makes me... I like this, and I think this would be good because the monsters aren't your typical, fantasy monsters. There's a spin on them. And, so your players aren't going to be... the great thing about running this is it's very D&D-like in its fantasy-esque, Tolkien-esque theme, but it's its own world. So your players aren't going to know anything unless they have access to this book. I haven't seen any PDFs floating around. It doesn't mean they don't exist. I'm sure if you search hard enough, you could find them. Another great piece of Elmore art. Back, he did this in '99. It's signed and down at the bottom. If you're a big fan of Tracy Hickman and Margaret Weis's fiction, and you want a game based in their imagination, I think this is the one for you. The art is fantastic. The races are very distinct. I think the game setting and the system, the mechanics are solid. I'm a big fan of that. I like it when the game mechanics make sense, and so far from what I've read, they do. Of course, the art, the theme throughout the book is very consistent. And obviously, it's from what I've read so far, it's very well written. I never got to play this, but I have a weekly Saturday game now. We're running D&D right now. My friend Brian is running, but I think when we take a break, I'm gonna run this. We're gonna make characters, and I'm gonna run this. I think that'll be interesting to play, to get to the table, and of course, the source books. The Ton, I think, is a GM source book. Yeah, adventurers on Lorim have been astonished and dismayed to encounter a new race of creatures never before seen on this continent. Subjects of the evil demigod Dagnarus, the Ton are a race of warriors whose main goal in life is to die in battle and to take as many of their enemies with them as they can. Worshippers of the destructive void magic, the Ton are powerful humanoids who intend to conquer and enslave the weaker races of Lorim. In the pages of this source book, the game master will find all he needs to add the Ton to his campaign, including a history of the Ton, their religious beliefs, stories, and legends, the unique ways they use the void magic, magic spells, and weapon descriptions of important Ton leaders and Ton Verkels, as well as their relationship to Dagnarus, the man they consider a god. Rules are included to play the Ton as game master or player characters. The Ton will provide excitement and challenges to players and game masters alike. So this is just a source book on the bad guys. So I'm set, man. I've got everything I need to run. And then, of course, there's the old Venigale source book. And this gives you everything you need to flesh out if you want to play a human in the Venigale, this gives you everything you need and more to play in that region, which is the large part of the continent. So, like I said, I'm very tempted to get this to the game table, and I like games that use a full assortment of dice, and I like games that let you roll more than one dice. I'm a big fan of that adding mechanic and character progression. As your character levels up, you get better and better dice, and that to me is cool. So, I don't know. Have you guys heard of Sovereign Stone? Have you seen it? Have you played it? I'm glad it's in my library. I'm going to try and get it to the table with the gaming group that I have right now. I think it'll be a very cool system. I'm going to look for the PDFs and see if I can find them, because I think the history and the lore is amazing. It's Tracy Weis and Margaret Weis and Tracy Hickman. You can't get any better writing than that. So definitely looking forward to it. Let me know what you think about it. Have you played it? Have you seen it? Do you own it? I'm definitely down to play this. I might even, if I can get enough interest, I might even run it on Fantasy Grounds, because I could use the more core system and we could just do what we got to do. So very cool. A blast from the past. If you see it sitting on a game shelf, and it, if you like D20, those books are easy to find because they made a ton of them. This is the harder one to get, the Sovereign Stone game system. If you can find this one or find the other source books besides these two, let me know. Especially if you find them online, I'll go pick them up when I'm able to, because I would like to get more of these books in my collection, because I'm a huge fan, and I think it would be nice to have all the books, because they had Well of Darkness, Sovereign Stone Trilogy Volume 1. So, excuse me. Guys, definitely pick it up if you get a chance. If you see it in your local favorite game store, let me know what you think about it. Have you ever gotten a chance to play it? It'd be super cool if you did. Let me know what your thoughts were, and if you enjoyed it. I'm looking forward to getting it to the table and running it for my friends. I'm going to be reading it. I'm currently running an Esper Genesis game, which is tonight, and then I'm also going to run a 1/2 shot of Simba Room, because I'm a big fan of Simba Room. I really like the mechanics. I like the game system, and I've got 3 players that are excited to play. Hopefully a 4th player. We'll find out soon, and we'll go from there. So, as always, guys, like and subscribe. Peace and hair grease, and remember, Mr. Mean says be nice.